come about. The first person I want to mention is one of our former museum commissioners made the connection. Clea Lynch, former museum commissioner, met Greg's mother at the Italian Heritage Days event 2 years ago, and put us in touch with Greg. Greg Camfield is an internationally known Mark Twain scholar, wrote the Oxford Companion to Mark Twain and some other publications. He also teaches literature and the humanities at UC Merced, and last year as a project, his class wrote and helped design this exhibit. And then they presented it to us, and at that point we formed a committee, and we started working forward on this, and I'll introduce the committee members very shortly. But it was, what made this really possible was the Paul Raggio Memorial Fund, and we want to thank Betty and the members of the family, because without that, this would never be a wonderful tribute to Paul. The committee that was involved in this is Kim Flagg. Here's Kim, and I'm looking around.
Kathy.
Where's Kathy?
Kathy died.
Oh.
They're actually kind of behind.
Oh, there's Kathy over there. And Jim Marshall, you can't miss Jim, he's in the back. And Steve Flagg, where's Steve?
He just left.
Oh, he left. And Judy Laws.
I'm here.
Oh, you're behind me, okay. And who else?
Jay Luley.
Jay, where's Jay? Jay Luley was involved. These people worked tirelessly.
Judith Marvin.
Where's Judith? Oh, here's Judith, Marvin.
And Linda Goff.
And Linda Goff, our artist. We turned this over to Linda, and this is the product of what we have. She's a very talented young lady. Let's give her a hand. This is the beginning. We'll be doing more things with our exhibit. We're going to be featuring local families, and I know that the Menard was here. Oh, here's a Menard. Menard, okay. But we're going to be featuring your family here in a short while. We just didn't have time for this event to get it up and get it going. And there's some other people I'd like to recognize. I want to recognize the Museum Commission, because they helped build all of this and pull the museum together. And where's Bob Pettiholm, the chairman? He's way in the back. Bob Pettiholm. Who are the other commissioners? I can't see back.
Tad.
Jay Luley. Where's Tad? Jay Luley's a commissioner. Tad Pollendorf is here somewhere. Oh, he's in the back too. Kim's a commissioner. She's here. And am I missing anyone I can't see around the room? Also, I want to thank the Angels Camp Museum Foundation. Jim Fletcher is the president. Kathy Dodge is vice president. Kathy was behind me a little while ago. And Jim Marshall. Jeanette. Ricio, where's Jeanette? Jeanette's back here. Am I missing anyone? All of these people worked tirelessly, and I
Lori
have to...
Counts.
Where's Lori? Oh, she's way in the back, and her daughter Italy. And everyone's worked tirelessly to have this come about. I'd like to ask Greg if he'd say a few words and maybe answer some questions if you folks would like to ask Greg. But Greg, why don't you tell us about how you classed worked and how you pulled all this together?
Well, what we did is we read a lot of Mark Twain. Right at the beginning of the term, we read all the stuff from this period and talking about it. He came back to this period in his life repeatedly. So we read a lot of that stuff, and then we kind of got together. We took a couple of class sessions just to talk about what are the issues. If you wanted to tell people why they should pay attention to Mark Twain, and what his relationship was to California, what would the main things you'd want to talk about be? And so we came up with a whole bunch of questions, a whole bunch of things that we wanted to elaborate on. And then we realized that they kind of went in a lot of different directions, and so we needed something to hold it all together. So what you see here is a distillation of what we come to think of as the heel of this boat. And there were a lot of intersections. We had a bunch of students who were interested in 19th century music because they saw how frequently Mark Twain talked about music. Another group that was very interested in the way ideas of a proper etiquette changed, especially given that most people's ideas of etiquette really came from Europe and were governed by at least an East Coast idea. And Mark Twain, as a Westerner all his life, had a very complicated relationship, shall we say, with East Coast ideas of propriety. And we saw that all the time in his writing. And so one group wanted to figure out, well, what were the standards back then? And started looking at etiquette books and the way Mark Twain was parodying those and playing with those. So there's an exhibit on etiquette that's probably going to get added in here, and so forth. There were lots of different pieces. So this, in our imagination, as I say, was sort of the spine of it. And then we also had a group, a small group, a couple people looking at possible grants that we could use to help fund the university, the museum, in collaboration with the university. And we're still working on trying to put some of those together. But if we can find the money for the infrastructure, we were thinking that it might be fun to have certain kinds of electronic toys, if you will, sort of hypertext in and out here, or maybe to have a bunch of MP3 players that people could take around the museum grounds, giving them a guided tour with little snips of Mark Twain here and there, or a backdrop of the music that would have been common in the period, and so forth and so on. I basically told them, think everything you would like a museum to be, and put a proposal together. So there are pages and pages and pages of proposals still in there, and as is always the case with proposals, most of them I'm sure will not come to fruition. But I look forward to, over time, seeing if we can find external funding. Success breeds success. And I look at this, and I think you clearly have a team of people who are really able to do a fine job, and I think we'll be able to find some agencies to sweeten the pot.
We'll get there. I want to thank Greg for coming in. I want to mention some things that are coming up. Well, first, before I do that, I also want to say that the wealth of information the class presented will be used in the future. And we also, in addition to featuring local families that have been here generations and generations and were here during Twain's life, we're going to, down at the end of the room, we have a desk from Jackass Hill. We have other artifacts from Jackass Hill from the caretakers that were on the property in the 1880s and 1890s. We haven't had a chance to bring them out. The piano at the end of the room here was brought around the horn in 1850s, and it was in a saloon and then in a home that we know Twain was in the saloon, and we know that he was in that home. He probably stood by that piano, and maybe that burn on it is from a cigar. I don't know. But at any rate, we have some rare artifacts here. We have our in-house Samuel Clemens Mark Twain right here, and he's going to be with us on Saturday at the Miners' Picnic, which is an event I want to invite you all to. It's free to the public. We have some exciting things happening, ranging from frog jumping to rope making for kids. There's going to be a lot of other activities. Greg is going to speak about Twain's time in Angels Camp.